This is the Art of Darkness podcast with Kevin Kautzman.
And Brad Kelly. We're a couple of very online writers interested in the dark side of what drives creative people to create against all odds.
This show is about art and the people who make it, what it costs them, and what it takes to bring something unique and impactful into the world.
Each episode, we excavate the life and work of an artist you might think you know.
Don't worry, they're all safely dead.
On every episode, we try and find out just what the hell was wrong with them and how they worked through their darkness to create something that lives on after them and continues to move culture.
Find us online at artofdarkpod.com and on Twitter at artofdarkpod. All right, we've got some sponsors for the pod now.
Wait, what?
Every link you need for the things we talk about here is at artofdarkpod.com/sponsors. First up, books.
If you're into this podcast, odds are you're probably a reader. We've got links to buy new books from bookshop.org and used books from alibris.com.
And if you want to listen to your books, we recommend and use audible.com.
It's great, and the catalog is huge.
All right. So if you're listening to this, you are online.
Maybe you're very online.
You probably have a website or are thinking of starting one. Maybe you want a website like artofdarkpod.com. We built that with WordPress, which is by far the most popular way to create websites. And the single best host for serious WordPress is WP Engine. I've personally used them for over a decade now, and I don't host my websites anywhere else. Go to artofdarkpod.com/sponsors and click on the WP Engine link to learn more.
Finally, the best way to support the show is at patreon.com/artofdarkpod. Get the bonus After Dark content for every episode, access to the book club, and more.
Thanks for supporting Art of Darkness. And I don't think that was too painful. I think we did a pretty good job there.
Yeah, that sounded good.
Yeah, we appreciate it. Victor Gruen to the United States of America, New York City, circa 1938. Wow. All right. Okay. How are we doing, Brad?
Yeah, pretty good. I mean, he's been through a heck of a lot already. You mentioned before he basically comes with no money whatsoever. He's managed to hang on to sort of proof of his capabilities. I imagine in 1938, the rules and regulations about who is licensed to do what kind of work were probably a little more lax than they are now. I mean, I think if an architect came from another, I don't know how it all works, but I do know that there are some pretty famous anecdotal cases of people coming from other countries. And they're like, yeah, I was a surgeon and now I drive a taxi cab. Because, despite the fact that I had a 15-year successful career as a doctor, I don't have the right piece of paper for the, I don't know how much that he had to suffer, but
the impression I got is that Gruen was able to leverage his cosmopolitanism and background in Vienna very heavily. The way that a guy will come over here with a British accent and just slay.
Yeah,
because he's got a British accent.
Right. It was like, he's so really interesting. Smart.
Yeah. It's like, no, he's just a regular dude. He just has a different accent. There's a little bit of that with Victor Gruen. Okay. Gruen, he's,
I mean, he'd be a fool not to leverage it. Right.
Right. And then I think that there's an element of pathos around it too. Like, this man is a refugee. This man has had his country taken from him. And now he's totally committed to America and he wants to build stuff. And he seems to be very talented and competent. All right, let's press on as we go. I think we're hitting hour 3-ish. So we're
into hour 3.
Yeah, we're getting into hour 3. Yeah. Very good. After Nazi Germany's annexation of Austria in 1938, Gruen and his first wife, Lizzie Cardos, fled to the U.S. Once there, he kept his promise to fellow political cabaret refugees and resurrected their Viennese theater group on Broadway in New York. That really happened.
I respect that, man.
Together. I do too. They got together and they got something like 3 reviews in the New York Times, like 3 good notices, something like this. And of course, a lot of it's like, well, we gotta support these refugees. It's like for the war effort. But I don't doubt that they were putting on something interesting and unique. The Viennese refugee artists group was a success. But Gruen's first architectural commission in America, a design for the Lederer store on Fifth Avenue in 1939, had recently drawn praise and shown Gruen that there was a lack of individuality, originality, and inventiveness in the field of retail and commercial construction. He determined to pursue architecture. We're coming up to his second wife here. I want to read his impression of New York when he first arrived. The dawning of a new day, July 13th, 1938, brings dreams of my past life to an end. In the pale light of morning, it seems that we are approaching steep mountain cliffs. Only the sun's rays reveal these mountains as the skyscrapers of Manhattan. Suddenly on the left appears the Statue of Liberty. In our excitement, she seems much more than a monument to us. It is as if she is holding out her arms to welcome us. Now we have succeeded. In front of us lies America, the land of unlimited opportunity, the new world in its bizarre, skyscraper-studded million metropolis of New York. A kaleidoscope of constantly changing colors and shapes. The foaming waters of the harbor fluted by ocean liners, cargo ships, puffing tugboats, a jazz concert of sirens, dark and light ship's bells, screeching seagulls. Our ship is slowly towed to the dock. From there, a torrent of handkerchiefs waves at us. Thousands of welcome cries are combined into a single fanfare of jubilation. Over the ramp and down we go to the mainland of our new home. We get warm hugs from Uncle Harry and Ruth York. Then it's a thunderous, deafening ride on an express subway, which stops only at every 10th station. As Europeans, we find the variety of skin colors of the other passengers unusual. And then the sudden silence at Ruth's home. A nice, cozy apartment in a 4-story building in a quiet residential area on 68th Street in Manhattan. It is in no way different from a home in a European city. Just around the corner is the lush green of romantic Central Park.
Just imagining the relief of that moment, right? You've been through all of this and suddenly,
and think about
still got stuff to do. There's still, but
think about
safe.
all the relief of all the people who have ever come to America over time. America as this great, troubled, messed up lifeboat for humanity is what it is, among
really
other
something.
things.
Yeah,
it really is. I think about I had some people came before Ellis Island, others came during Ellis Island. You think about that story, and things were not going well
elsewhere, right?
Elsewhere,
right.
So here we are in the new world, so-called. All right, so I've got something from the mall maker, and don't worry, we're gonna get to the mall business.
Oh yeah,
it's coming. Yeah. It's coming. I want to talk a little bit about retail as like theater. And so he would work on Fifth Avenue here in New York City. And so let's see here. They were thinking about, what an arcade is, right? Like a Viennese arcade, an old world arcade. It's sort of the closest thing to a mall that you would have had back then. And it's like a series of little shops all in a row.
Right.
It's called an arcade. It's open. It's open air, and it's not. They aren't combined by one uniform building. Right.
Right.
And you have unique shops that are sort of dressed up.
It's also sort of like a bazaar, but a little more permanent.
Right. Yeah. So Gruen had his own theory based loosely on psychology of the arcade's popularity. The relationship between window shopper and merchant, he warned in a 1941 article for Display World, was a fundamentally antagonistic psychological contest. A merchant must bewitch a passerby and overcome a natural resistance, a phobia of entering a store. The merchant's first goal was to transform a person, often without the slightest intention of buying or even looking, into a captivated window shopper. A magical storefront, architectural forms, material, artificial light, signs, and the interesting arrangement of the displayed merchandise accomplished this transformation. Next, the designer had to lead the window shopper, whose resistance is already slightly weakened, unconsciously along the show windows towards the entrance door. The shopper's resistance would be broken by more display windows. In this psychological battle, the consumer would be entranced by the best possible view of the merchandise. A victory, Gruen vowed, would be inevitable. By setting the dramatic high point of your display near the entrance door, people would unconsciously cross the threshold. For Gruen, this was just the start of employing sophisticated and invisible devices to entice customers into shops, tricks that even critics did not notice. And so this is when he's working with a woman named, or with a person named Ketchum. At the same time that Gruen and Ketchum designed their arcade stores, Gruen also began experimenting with a new storefront. In 1939, another former Viennese merchant asked Gruen and his new partner, Elsie Krummek, to design his Fifth Avenue store, and Elsie would become his second wife, and we'll talk about that. After a very amicable divorce, per Victor's own words. And I don't believe he and his first wife had children. And the way I recall it from the book, and we might read some of this, is something like they start talking about getting a divorce, like kind of almost casually, like, we'll just get a divorce one day.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It happens sometimes to some people. It's not. Yeah. But then again, we're going by Victor's words too. So
that's right. It's one side of the story.
Yeah. For Gruen, this Fifth Avenue store was the fourth retail commission from fellow Jewish refugees. So they're giving each other work. Gruen and Krummek had met and fallen in love while working on the World's Fair. Gruen divorced Lizzie in 1940 and married Krummek the next year. They remained architectural partners for 12 years. Krummek, from a German Jewish family, had grown up in Brooklyn. So this is, at this point now, he's got an American partner.
Wife,
and my understanding is that when they met, there's like an afterword in Shopping Town. There's a chapter from Gruen's daughter and from Gruen's son. And the
that's
daughter,
that's from this marriage.
From this marriage, yeah. And the daughter really defends her mother, because Gruen isn't necessarily very friendly to her when it comes to the way that the business would eventually be split up. And the daughter really comes to her defense and says that Gruen really underplays her role, and also like what she brought to the marriage. Like apparently she was making, I think, like $100 a week, and Victor was making 40. Like she was successful, a lot more successful and established, and they partnered together. And without her, there's just no way that Victor Gruen Associates or Victor Gruen would have become Victor Gruen.
Right.
For sure.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's read a little more. She attended Manhattan's Parsons School of Design and then worked as an exhibition designer at the Chicago World's Fair of 1933. As Gruen and his first wife had shared a passion for Viennese theater and socialism, so Gruen and Krummek shared a passion for retail design. Later, when they would fall apart, it was because I think Gruen was stepping out. Gruen was traveling a lot. And beyond that, she wanted to work on design projects, like smaller. I'm going to design this store. Meanwhile, Gruen's like, I'm going to design an entire new world, entire new concept that's, stores and dentistry, and we're going to reinvent the American suburbs. And now I'm off to talk with the Shah of Tehran to talk about replanning, or the Shah of Iran to talk about whatever it is. Really. And like now I'm off, and later we'll come to it. Now I'm off to the White House to talk to Eleanor Roosevelt. And to have a meeting with her about, or whatever it is. So
two different sets of incentives, two different sort of missions.
But for now they're a plucky newlywed couple without any kids in the scene yet. And they get to do a candy shop. And this was with somebody else, actually. So the Altman and Kuhn candy shop was the first design of a very fruitful partnership. Must have been something they worked on for somebody else. So they designed a candy shop together and won the new partners instantaneous praise. On December 3rd of 1939, readers of the New York Times saw the striking shop as the front page's lead image. The paper went on to sing the praises of the designers. Days later, the New York World Telegram ran its own article about the candy shop. Altman and Kuhn, who just opened their swanky candy shop in the Gotham Hotel, scorned the prosaic showcase, the reporter trumpeted. The novel design with individual revolving tables and wall niches elevated the candies so that the shopper had the feeling they're as precious as sapphires and diamonds. The Architectural League of New York continued the praise by awarding the candy shop a place in its year-end exhibition of outstanding modern design. So they come together, and their first big project together is like a big hit. It's a big hit. Yeah, it's a smashing hit.
Nice. Very good for them.
Yeah, and do you see that it tracks a little bit what I was saying about the idea of the theatricality of design and presentation?
Well, especially that bit before where he's sort of talking about the psychological processes by which somebody is brought into a store, right? It sort of reminds me of like Ed Bernays level, we're in this period of this marketing coming to the fore as a you can actually manipulate people to buy stuff. I mean, that's always been around, but the marketing as an enterprise, like at the dawn of the 20th century, was more like, look at how sturdy the latches are on this thing. You want this, right? Whereas now we're getting into we're going to start manipulating very subtle psychological factors about what it means to be a human being. And he's playing that game at a certain scale too.
Just slightly evil.
Right.
Just a little bit of evil. And the evil lives in not asking, should we do this?
Right.
Somebody's going to do it.
Right.
And I got to deliver results for my clients, my clients who pay me the greenbacks. Right. So I'm going to try to use the latest methods.
Right.
But the idea that it's all just by happenstance, of course, is just so silly. No, it's like one of those spiders like a trapdoor spider.
Right.
And you're the little fly and you're up against a million of these guys and you don't even know they're there.
Right.
So here's some specific business about it from the Mall Maker book. Although show windows were extremely important, in modern stores, the focus turned more and more toward the goods. The goods, got to get the goods. The goods became the architecture's shining ornament. As historian Walter Benjamin observed about retailing, the architectonic function of wares was crucial. Shoes, candy, clothing, and jewels became the architecture's flourish. Merchandise can tell a unified story, Lapidus observed. If a storefront functioned as an advertising poster, then the arcade and the open front invited people to step into the poster's promising world. For Gruen, luring people into the store's illusory world had another precedent as well: the theater. 10,000 little glamorous shows put on by the merchants, Gruen wrote about New York City stores. And the storefront was the stage of these little shows. Gruen loved drama in retail, on the stage, and in his daily life. And he meant the comparison between New York stores and theaters to be taken literally. The importance of the show window, which, as its name implies, presents a show, is obviously to impress the public, Gruen exclaimed. He insisted that arcades' show windows were little theater displays, and the exhibit is gratis. As spotlights highlighted the action on a theater stage, so too spots in stores animated the stars of its show, the goods. Describing one storefront strategy, Gruen said that he wanted to transform this space into a regular display stage with all the features which stage technique offers. Though the design should not reveal backstage display construction and lighting, which would detract from the main show of the merchandise. With an audience on the sidewalk, the facade as curtain and the sign as marquee, the show windows and showroom as the stage, and the stock rooms as the backstage, the store as theater provided an appealing metaphor for commercial spaces. Of course, in this metaphor, Gruen cast himself as the all-powerful playwright, director, and stage designer. And as in a stage production, the director hoped to focus all eyes on the performers. Gruen wanted to make shopping into a delightful and amusing way for people to while away their hours, temporarily to transcend their own concerns. The environment should be so attractive that customers will enjoy shopping trips, will stay longer, and return more often, Gruen later explained. Sound familiar?
Yeah. And there's a way that's, sort of ethically neutral, right? But also we're going to talk more about it. I mean, it does lead to this feeling that I think people generally complain about in urban areas and in suburban areas in particular, where like there's nowhere to go that doesn't cost money, right? There's nothing to do that doesn't have a transaction associated with it. And the mall is sort of the platonic ideal of this problem, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Here's a little bit about LZ and then his first wife, Lizzie. I get the most help from my work colleague, LZ Krimick. As the most talented member of the department, she draws a salary of $100 per week, while I make only $30. That's quite a discrepancy.
It is.
Also, she is young and beautiful. Soon we go out together in the evening. The language instruction continues in her artist studio in Greenwich Village. This kind of linguistic study has proved to be the most effective in human history. Saucy.
Yeah. You want to come up and learn the language? Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I like that. Okay.
The lingua franca.
Yeah.
At the same time, Lizzie has fallen in love with a young Italian named Ben La Rosa.
Hey,
all right.
It's a land of opportunity. I mean, what are you going to do?
Yep.
And at this point, they don't have kids. It's a whole new beginning. I mean, it's kind of understandable almost in a certain way, right?
Yeah. If you're not bonded together by absolute true love in this, it's like, okay, all right, I get it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. We agree that one day we will get a divorce when we possess the means to do so. And
saving up for our divorce. Everybody put a nickel in the piggy bank every day. We'll get divorced.
They're going to fit right in Manhattan. They're fitting it right in New York City. A lot of people save it up to pay for their divorces out in New York City. She would eventually marry La Rosa and live with him in San Francisco. Yeah. So,
well, I'm actually glad she found somebody. I was afraid this story was going to go, he like abandoned her, moved to a new country and then she's on her own. But no, this sounds okay.
Yeah, he makes it sound like I was stepping out, she was stepping out. Everything's okay. Again, we only have Victor's words here. We don't have a bio from her. So, in any case, all right, I've got a little bit more about theater here. Let me see
I do find it fascinating, this theater connection. I mean, it makes perfect sense once you start laying it out, but to see the direct historical connections is fascinating.
Yeah, it's something that I've always known, but never really meditated that too much on. But I think the next time I go to the Mall of America or I go over to some mall over here, I'm going to look at it differently.
Yeah, especially a place like the Mall of America. And well, we're going to end up talking about it more, but I feel like the shopping mall used to be a bigger thing in American life, and we're in something slightly different, at least in my experience. We're in like big box parking lot deserts now, which are somehow worse.
They are worse. Worse. I would rather have malls with box stores as anchors that then feed into malls.
You go to the food court and,
I would rather have Gruen's original vision, which I will come to. But in any case, this is about that, because I think it's too good a topic to glaze over or to just to pass by. This is about the premiere of their Viennese refugee theater group. The premiere of the first production of the Viennese theater group took place on June 20th of 1939 at the Music Box Theater, which had been one of the most beautiful theaters on Broadway. The musical review was titled From Vienna. Our mission was clear in our minds. Most of the young actresses and actors would at last stand in a real theater on a real stage, on Broadway, no less. For me, it meant even more. In the morning, my mother had arrived from England. Now she sat in the audience to see a show that was produced by her son. So he's doing all of this and producing a show on Broadway. So again, the theater connection here is not slight. It's not anecdotal. It's not an incidental thing. It's like, no, this dude is a showman, and that's how he thinks about it. And he's the guy who invented the mall down the street from you.
Right.
Theater guy from Vienna, socialist. Nuts.
Wild.
Through a peephole in the curtain, I checked to see if there was an audience. It was summer in a dead season for theater, but the music box was crammed full. After a musical overture by an American orchestra we had engaged because of union rules, the curtain, nothing changes. The curtain finally rose. To open, the entire ensemble sang the song Dear Parents, a wistful letter to the parents at home. Then followed a skit by Hans Weigel, Musical Day, which parodied classical music and had been translated into English by Werner Michel. The main act of the first part was Jura Seufer's play Journey to Paradise in 6 scenes. After the intermission, there was a skit on the Salzburg Marionette Theater, a solo song and dance number by Ella Roden, text by Pete Hammerschlag, and the humorous skit English in 6 Easy Lessons, in which we parodied our language difficulties. The conclusion featured a selection of Vienna choir songs in both German and English. The performance went smoothly in spite of our excitement and nervousness, with abundant applause for each scene. After the show, we all waited excitedly until dawn for the appearance of the reviews. We were nervous because we knew that bad reviews, especially in the New York Times, could abruptly put an end to the show. Even before the day dawned, we breathed a sigh of relief. The newspapers ran unusually long reviews that ranged from warmly sympathetic to enthusiastic. The long Journey to Paradise was praised a little less than the short scenes. Equally acknowledged with full admiration was the fact that a group of refugees were able to create a respectable Broadway show with such good English so soon after their arrival. I quote from one of 3 major articles in the New York Times. No one can doubt that we must be grateful for their presence, because the refugee artists are cheering and charming people with a lot of artistic talent and a winning attitude. There was a lot of emotion on both sides of the footlights, an emotion that could be shared without restriction. The enthusiasm with which these actors approach each role is admirable itself, a review technique which is unknown in this country. One of the obvious truths is that these refugees' talents and ideas will enrich our culture. The article concludes with the words, Hitler's loss, our gain.
Right. So you can see, hey, good for them. They're putting on this show. But you can see in those reviews, this is like a little bit of, it's a little propagandist. But that's
sure.
fine.
It's pander. Again, nothing changes.
Right. Right. But what a cool moment for Victor Gruen and his friends.
Yeah, of course. What do you think happens next?
Oh, gosh. I don't know. He has to move to Minnesota.
No. The reviews were so good that they endangered the cohesion of the group. Individual actors were singled out as stars. Yeah, it's like I'm waiting for the first review of Art of Darkness.
Right. My name won't be anywhere in it.
Right. No, Brad's episodes are kaleidoscopic, experiences. Kevin, I don't know what he's doing. That kind of thing. You're never gonna break up the podcast duo. Yeah, but some people got called out as stars, and like Illa Roden, they said she deserved to be in a great show immediately, and she was offered a Broadway show, but she declined out of loyalty to the group.
Wow.
Where the total
Victor Gruen's socialist blood rising.
Yeah. We are all the same. We are all equal. This is a troop. We all go to the mall together. But the show ran for 3 months. There were interviews, photo reports, and broadcasting.
Wow.
And they got a review. They got a visit from Eleanor Roosevelt, who came up on stage and thanked all of those involved personally. Yeah. So
okay,
I may have conflated.
That's a big deal. I mean,
yeah. It's the first lady.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I may have mentioned Eleanor Roosevelt earlier when I meant a different first lady, but in any case, he meets this first lady too. So he's not messing around. I'm really glad that I touched on that, because again, I think it's essential to understand.
Oh, absolutely.
Ecology. Yeah. Right. So we're getting ready for the next big move. And where do you think Gruen goes next, Brad? Not Minnesota.
He doesn't go to Minnesota.
No.
California.
He goes to LA, baby.
Yeah.
You nailed it. You nailed it. All right. So this is a quote from Gruen from 1947. Stores lead a double life. They are factories with machinery behind the scenes, machinery which must be well-oiled, invisible, and inaudible. To the outside, they present the gayer side of the double life. They are showplaces and exhibits with the aim of arousing interest in the displayed merchandise. And this is from Mallmaker. Victor Gruen's prospects looked bright going into the 40s. His architectural career had taken off. Cyril Magnin of San Francisco's famous retailing family awarded Gruen and Krumik the designs of his Reno and San Mateo branches of women's clothing stores. The partners were also hired to design 2 branches for another California chain of women's apparel stores in 1940. In 1941, Architectural Forum ran a fawning 7-page spread, even giving Gruen and Krumik complete liberty with the text. They composed a passionate explanation of their underlying principles of store design, touting the virtues of their sales factory that could increase sales 2 to 3 times. Well, the secret of outstanding creations was a matter beyond theoretical considerations. The designers promised that an imaginative scheme, like a musical theme, enhanced a store's technical and psychological devices to assure success. The article gave Gruen the limelight that he craved. Now he was writing, designing, and promoting. Calls for more commissions poured in for a women's clothing store in Oklahoma City, a candy shop in New York City, a women's shop in White Plains, and more. Gruen's personal life looked bright as well. His spirits were up. Life could never be grim. He remembered about this time. I got to say, dude's a killer.
Yeah,
he is out here crushing it. I mean, he's a refugee. He produces a Broadway show. Then he's getting these commissions nationwide with his new wife after an amicable divorce. Yeah, right.
Not too shabby.
Not too shabby. Yeah, and not dwelling in woe is me, it would seem.
Right. Right.
He was thankful to be far from Vienna's violence and in the U.S. To have relative peace and prosperity. Victor and his wife Lizzie their divorce was so amicable that she even went to work for one of his New York City clients, Barton's Bonbonnery, as a buyer. So they get divorced, and then she goes down the street and works for our client. He's a great guy. It just didn't work out. Have you met my Italian husband?
Yeah. Right.
In May 1941, Victor Gruen and Elsie Krumik left New York for the sunshine of L.A. And the month after arriving, married in Santa Catalina Island. Even though they had very little money, the newlyweds optimistically gave their rented house in Hollywood a fresh coat of paint and purchased the latest in modern furnishings. Their firm immediately began to grow. Michael Auer, a young designer who had been trained in Budapest and Zurich, and Rudi Baumfeld, a childhood friend of Gruen's from Vienna, joined the firm in 1941. Most promising was the commission from a new kind of client with deep pockets, a national chain store. This commission would allow Gruen to take the strategies of the sales factory from Manhattan to Main Street, and the move onto a national stage would shape and Americanize Gruen and his design. The new client was the Grayson Robinson stores of California. Grayson sold lower-priced, ready-to-wear clothing and accessories for women. By 1938, the company had operated 16 shops throughout California. By 1945, the chain had grown to 43 stores, called Grayson's in the West and Robinson's in the East, stretching from Philadelphia to Seattle and El Paso to L.A. By 1950, the company was the 17th largest retailer in the country, doing $85 million in sales, a figure equal to Washington, D.C.'s Hecht department store. Throughout the war years, Grayson's grew at a phenomenal rate. Only the Lerner stores of New York outpaced it in sales of women's clothing by 1950. For Gruen and Krumik, designing for the chain was a dream come true. So it's a natural progression that would lead him finally to the two really big projects that are going to be the centerpiece of this kind of next part of the episode: Northland in Detroit, and then Southdale in Edina, with Southdale being recognized as the first proper mall. All right, let's go. And I'm coming up to his. This is going to be a lot of fun, Brad. I'm coming up to his initial impression of Detroit.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
What do you think Victor Gruen made of Detroit circa
Well,
1980?
he's hitting it probably in the 40s or early 50s, and it was happening then, for the most part. I mean, you're talking
Compared
about
to compared to Vienna, though, we'll
yeah.
see.
Well,
Yeah,
no, it's
yeah,
not quite Vienna. Right, right, right.
right, right,
It'd
right,
be
right.
interesting to see.
We
Very
love
industrial
Minneapolis.
place
We
too.
love, yeah, very industrial place. We love
Hmm.
Detroit. We love our Detroit listeners and our
Hmm.
Detroit co-host. I have to say,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Detroit's this podcast is a Detroit respecter.
yeah, yeah. I like that.
Yeah. All right. Over the next decade, Gruen partnered with the talented interior designer Elsie Krumek. We've already met her.
Hmm.
They married and moved to LA, where they worked on 11 branches of Grayson's, then went on to design a number of department stores for Macy's.
Nice. The
As
cool
well.
thing about that is he gets to scale now, right? I mean, you can design certain things that are copy and paste because that thing's going in, 5 different stores. So that's where the money starts happening.
These are
Yeah.
serious, big time clients, he
Yeah.
said as he drank a little bit of water.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's a lot to do these episodes, man. We go.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. And there were other department stores that hired them. And he did a commercial building. He was naturalized as a U.S. citizen in 1943. Their business flourished, owing in part to innovations contributed by Krumek, including an original submission to Architectural Forum in 1943 for a grand interpretation of a future post-war city. By 1948, they had 2 children, a boy and a girl, and Krumek was less involved with their practice. So this is the classic story of she's got to step aside a bit because now they've got kids.
Right.
The marriage foundered. Gruen continued exploring ideas about the possibilities of designing an all-encompassing city plan. He realized he would need to build his business to include an interdisciplinary team of architects, planners, engineers, artists, and business professionals who would work together, and he began looking for an extraordinary client who could make his ideas possible. In the early 1950s, he would design an open-air shopping center called Northland near Detroit for J.L. Hudson's. The center was conceived as a core for surrounding homes, offices, hotels, and shops. All were to be developed under the control of Hudson's, including strict tenant controls and installation of original sculpture to assure a look of quality. Gruen also advocated for cooperative arrangements with local transportation authorities to improve traffic. All amenities were designed to improve the quality of life for residents in the surrounding suburban areas.
Okay. That all sounds great.
Is that what happened?
I doubt it.
And we're going to see. Here's his impression of Detroit in a chapter heading that's called Desolate City Core. Before bedtime, I decided to
fired.
Yeah, literally. Before bedtime, I decided to wander through the very center of the metropolis. The walk did not take much time. There were only 2 broad main roads, Washington Boulevard, lined mainly with office buildings, and the shopping street, Woodward Avenue, where there were some branch stores, discount shops, and a few closed businesses with for rent signs. Everything seemed outdated, run down, and lifeless. There was only one dramatic exception. Amid the stagnant desolation, the 10-story block long J.L. Hudson department store, with its seemingly endless brightly lit windows, was like a bulwark. Its solid red brick facade was not marred by any logos or advertising. Only on the side entrance did I find small bronze plaques with individual business names. I could find new buildings or businesses nowhere else, though I did see several vacant lots. Every time I took a step away from the main street, I entered desolate slums, from which, smelling danger, I retreated quickly. It's not the best impression of
No,
Detroit
it's really not. Yeah.
in the 50s.
They demolished that Hudson's building. I remember them demolishing that Hudson's building, and there was a sort of a very end of an era vibe around the Detroit area when that happened. Yeah, it hadn't been used as the store for a very long time, but it was the building itself,
Yeah. In 1951, he founded the architectural firm Victor Gruen Associates, which was soon to become one of the major planning offices of that time. After the war, he designed the first suburban open-air shopping facility called Northland Mall near Detroit in 1954. And I'm going to read a little bit about this. Let's see here. It is in Southfield, Michigan, an inner ring suburb of Detroit.
Northland in Southfield. That's
okay.
About makes sense for Detroit's geographical sense.
Yeah. Perfect. All right. Well, and here's just a little bit of history about it. The J.L. Hudson Company, a Detroit-based department store chain, built Northland Center. Hudson's, at its downtown Detroit location on Woodward Avenue, grew to become the second largest department store next to Macy's of New York City in the U.S. In 1948, Victor Gruen convinced Hudson's, then reluctant to build branch stores, to take advantage of suburban growth by constructing a ring of 4 shopping centers surrounding the city of Detroit. Of the 4, Eastland Center, Southland Center, Westland Center were the others. Northland was the first to be built. These malls encircle Detroit's inner ring of suburbs. At the time, Northland Center was the world's largest shopping center. It became the first major post-war development in suburban Detroit and was the first of many forays into the suburbs by Hudson's. Some $30 million was invested in constructing the facility. The first year gross for Northland Hudson's was $88 million.
Whoa.
Now, yes, they made their money back.
Now, in a year. That's insane for retail.
And so, and that's gross. Yeah, gross revenue.
Right.
So like, and we just have to put ourselves back into the state of mind here. He's describing the way that it was downtown in that earlier passage that I wrote. You've got these women who've all moved to the suburbs with their families, their husbands. Now I can drive half a mile, 2-3 miles down the interstate to this store. Go to Hudson's. It's just like the Hudson's downtown, honey. It's even better.
Right.
Oh, I don't believe you. I have to see it. No, honey, it's safe, honey. It's safe, honey. Yeah. Because because it needs to be safe.
Right. It has to be safe. Yeah. Interesting. The Eastland Mall, the Eastland Mall was just around the 2 miles from me where I live now. And they just tore it down. I actually sat in the parking. I went to the hardware store, which is near there, a little while back, just last year. And they were tearing down Eastland Mall. And I kind of sat there and just watched them tear parts of this building down. And now there's some new construction going on there. It's very exciting. It's going to be an Amazon fulfillment center.
That's perfect. It makes perfect sense. Yeah. Right. Nothing changes. Nothing changes. The shopping center opened to much fanfare. Articles about the center appeared in national media outlets such as the Wall Street Journal, Time, Look, Life, Ladies' Home Journal, and Newsweek. Reviewers had heralded the Northland as the future of shopping in post-war America. Besides Hudson's, Northland opened with a number of other local retailers, including Hughes and Hatcher, Max Greens, Cossins, The Wild Pear, Barnaby Children's Shops, Cunningham Drug, Baker Shoes, Chandler Shoes, Big Boy Restaurant, Himmelhoch's, Winkleman's, Albert's, SS Kresge Corporation, Robinson Furniture, Ramey's Curtains, Better Made Potato Chips, Kroger's, Baracchini Candles, and Sanders Confectionery.
Wow.
Northland featured auditoriums, the Northland Playhouse, the Northland Theater, a bank, a post office, infirmary, sculptures by Marshall Fredericks, fountains, an office for lost children, now a podcast studio.
Yeah.
Lavish landscaping and free gasoline for customers who had run out. And so now I'm just gonna leave it because then they talk about Gruen's like later dissatisfaction, but that does sound like gee whiz, by golly, we're moving into the future.
It does. Yeah. Why not we'll put it all together? Yeah. And you can just wander around in there. You can take your Sunday stroll through there and
think about
there's stuff for everybody in the family. And
what this does not exist. There's no Walmart There's no Kmart. There's no Target. There's no Home Depot. None of that. Then this pops up. What do you think it does to land value in the proximity?
It goes way up. Right.
And now everybody's building, and you literally have to plan around these nodes.
Yeah.
And we can just drop these wherever we want. It's like a game of SimCity.
Right. And you've got, I mean, how many people does it take to staff that for every one of those businesses you named? That's dozens of jobs.
Hundreds. Yeah. Hundreds.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Wild. Yeah. Jobs and everything. Yeah. Jobs and jobs. But I mean, this would be a time where, like, if you got a management role at the Hudsons at Northland, by golly, that was probably a pretty good job.
Yeah, I bet it was. Yeah.
Yeah. You'd have to dress up for that.
Right.
You have to wear a hat.
Right. Right.
This is when men wore hats, Brad.
Yeah.
All right. So now we're getting to the big one, which of course is in Minnesota.
Right.
Okay.
You guys love malls.
Just in case
there.
we know. Yeah, we do. It's the third
it's
mall.
Cold, man. You got to go. I mean, you're indoors.
It's cold in Detroit. It's cold in Detroit too. But okay. All right. Yeah. So now we're going to get into the Southdale Center. After the success of the first project, he designed his best known work for the owners of Dayton, the Dayton department stores, which I believe Macy's eventually bought. And the Daytons, they've been like governors of Minnesota. It's like old money retail department store family in Minnesota. The 800,000 square foot or 74,000 meter Southdale Mall in Edina, Minnesota, the first enclosed shopping mall in the country. Opening in 1956, Southdale was meant as the kernel of a full-fledged community. The mall was commercially successful, but the original design was never fully realized, as the intended apartment buildings, schools, medical facilities, park, and lake were not built. Instead,
go ahead.
No, what were you going to say?
Oh, I was just going to say, when we were talking about this earlier, what I was thinking would be missing from all of this, what makes it not a community is nobody lives there. Right. And I'm not saying I want to live there, but for it to be a community, there has to be people who live there. Right.
Well, and let's just imagine something like a mall, a modestly sized mall from the 50s or the 60s. But instead of being surrounded by parking lots, there's a small parking lot on one side, maybe, or on two sides, and then an apartment building, rows of apartment buildings and townhomes next to it, right? Yeah. And maybe the dentist is in one of the townhomes,
right?
And then there's intermodal. There's a bus line into the city, or there's a train line into the city, right? You could, in theory, possibly live there without a car in the suburbs.
Right.
None of that was realized.
Right.
They literally just took the commercial engine that the socialist theater kid from Vienna created and removed all of the humanism from it. Just all of it.
Right.
Yeah. And then
anything that didn't have a direct ROI on it, anything that couldn't take that $30 million investment and turn it into $80 million revenue in the first year
immediately too, because those ancillary things, those could be revenue generators too. You could rent apartments and nearby, or sell them, sell condos or whatever, and make a fortune. But that's just not how it was done. And I'm sure a lot of it has to do with the car lobby and with other interests. It's not just one thing. It's like, well, gee whiz, Billy, if we just put a big parking lot around that fucker and I put my car lot over there, shit.
Right.
We're gonna get rich. I mean, and they did, and and it did work. And I think part of the reason malls are so uncanny and jarring is that you can kind of feel the interior of these places is so well curated, and then the exteriors are just these horrific. They're called big car lots.
Yeah.
There's
cars as far as the eye can see. It's
inhuman. And then you walk inside, and there's music, and there's maybe a fountain, and they're putting all the effort on that. And then the exterior of the Mall of America is horrifying. It's like something out of You drive up to it and you go, I don't want to be here. This is horrible.
Right.
What am I doing here? Every time I go there, I'm like, what am I doing here?
Yeah, it's like they should have just went full brutalist. At least then it would have been striking.
Right.
Now it's just like,
it's like just a big nothing. Yeah.
Right.
It's really inhuman and disgusting. Most of them by far. I can't think of a single mall where you look at the exterior and go, gee, that really is elevating me today. I'm really excited. You almost want to rush to get in because it's like, at least I'm,
right.
Anyway, here we go. Brad and Kevin have opinions.
Yeah. We're mall kids. That's the thing.
Oh, yeah. Totally. Oh, my God.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember I was in the big Edmonton mall. I was going to meet up with somebody. I was like a teenager in Edmonton at that big mall. And I went to the game store and then like, oh, there she was. I'm like, this is the biggest mall in the world. You found me here. She's like, I knew you'd be here.
Dude, we used to go when everybody first got cars. I mean, there was a time where we would get dropped off by our parents sometimes, but when everybody first got cars, that's where we went. It's about a 20-minute drive to the mall, wander around. You'd spend $20 on like, a milkshake and play some video games at the arcade. And you'd always see somebody else you knew there. Yeah, it was a place to go.
90s kids, man. Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100% same.
Yeah, you'd go to FYI and buy some CDs, right? Spencer's Gifts.
Yeah, Spencer's. That was goofy. Yeah, Hot Topic. Hot Topic was a big deal. Yeah. You'd clothe yourself in all the undies and things would be JCPenney, but everything over the undies, Hot Topic. You gotta show out. It's the 90s, man.
Yeah.
You gotta let them know who you are.
Yeah, see, I was more of a skater kid, so I was more like Pac Sun. And
okay.
Trying to think what else was another store. I can't even think of the names, but hated Abercrombie and Fitch. See, if you were born in the year I was born, whether you liked Abercrombie and Fitch or hated it was a very important character defining decision that you made that staked your claim in your entire social milieu.
Right. Whether you wore the Metallica t-shirt or the Tool t-shirt or the Nine Inch Nails shirt or the Nirvana shirt, that stuff mattered. Nobody can quite explain exactly how, but you classify yourself like a botanist.
Yeah, in hindsight, it all seems kind of the same, but at the time, the stakes were high for this sort of stuff.
Stakes were high, and they were high for Victor Gruen too. So here we go. Every day will be a perfect shopping day, cooed the adverts for America's first indoor mall when it opened in Edina, Minnesota in 1956. Edina is blanketed by snow and ice in winter and baked by unbearably humid heat in summer. The Southdale Center offered the bliss of balmy strolls all year round. Inside its crisp, white, rectangular blocks lay neat parades of shops arranged around a 3-story garden court of perpetual spring, where 50-foot eucalyptus trees rose toward high windows and exotic vines tumbled from balconies overhead. A cylindrical cage filled with brightly colored birds towered over cafe tables adorned with cheery yellow umbrellas despite the lack of weather, while a carousel turned to the soothing sounds of Muzak. Compared with the familiar low-rise outdoor strip malls, this climate-controlled multi-story shopping landscape was a breakthrough. Americans only walk when they are in college or on vacation. Now, they're going to walk in the mall. Flow up and down is so easy and uninhibited, gushed Architectural Forum, on the novel use of escalators. And so much gaiety is added by that second layer of moving people, lights, and color. That timidity about two-level design now seems pointless. This radical vision was the work of Victor Gruen, who we've already met. He set his sights on bringing a dose of Viennese urbanity to what he saw as the car-dominated avenues of horror of American commercial strips. He imagined Southdale as the center of a new high-density mixed-use district surrounded by housing and offices, as well as a school and a medical center, with an artificial lake wrapped by curved streets, all forming a utopian blight-proof neighborhood.
No.
Victor has some ideas. We're going to humor him.
Yeah.
He's got some good ideas, but I don't know if we're really going to do all of this. But let's talk about the building itself here.
Yeah. he's got some good ideas, but what he didn't realize is that he saw the highways of horror, and what he didn't realize is in America you can't fix those. You'll throw a solution at it, and what he's talking about, what he saw, will swallow it and transmog it. Will make it part of itself. And that's what seems like happened with the shopping mall. Seem reasonably good idea on paper, and you throw it into the maw of America, and it's.
I think he's a pie-eyed, naive socialist who had a bit of a silver spoon upbringing. Even after his father died, he was grandfathered into a career. And then he lived on the care of other people and the kindness of other people, and built his career as a refugee, being handed more and more things. And then I think he started working out of network, if you understand my meaning.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's no way he could have spent enough time in Minnesota or in Michigan to understand American politics and the way that in America politics is indistinguishable from commerce.
Right.
They're the same thing.
Yeah.
And
his life in New York City is a different America than in Edina, Minnesota.
Yes. Right. Correct. Yeah. And the people in Edina are going to be very, very, very good at getting what they want out of you, making you think you win, and then you only realizing later that they've fucked you. That's the other side of the passive aggressive thing. And I guarantee, and I'm not speaking ill of them, because this is actually an extraordinary achievement. This is like a good strategy for surviving and thriving in America. I guarantee the Daytons and their people were excellent at that. I am sure they were very nice to Victor.
I'm sure. Yeah,
those Minnesotans are so nice.
Yeah.
You're going to make the Southdale Center in Edina. Meanwhile, they're just like, we're just going to make so much money. We're just going to make so much money. And then also let's just say too, solve a need.
For sure. Yeah.
Like the downtown cores of Minneapolis and St. Paul, like you're going to visit St. Paul, I'll show you downtown. Like there's no way that those things could have served for the sprawling population of the Twin Cities what like the suburbs and suburban malls do. There's just it's just not possible.
Right.
Not with the way car culture is, and not with the way the culture is out here. I mean, it's the middle of winter here right now. We're not going outside every single day. We're saving our trips, and when we go on our trips, we go to the mall, or we go shopping, or we go to, there's like a little community center in a town over here called Woodbury that has a library and a little children's play area, and it has a waterfall and it has all this stuff. And I think in like Gruen's vision, the mall and that thing would have been one thing.
Right.
But I could see in no possible way would that ever be anything that could happen at scale repeatedly across multiple places. Can you imagine? How does Barnes and Noble coexist with the library?
Right.
Right.
Yeah, very good point.
Just doesn't work.
That's exactly right. Oh man.
Yeah. Wild. So here he wants to build his utopian blight-proof neighborhood. Dayton, the development company, had other ideas. The construction of the shopping center massively raised land values in the surrounding areas. So they decided to cash in, flogging their remaining plots to builders of single-family homes. The result has since become an all too familiar sight across the U.S., a mall marooned in a sea of car parking, ringed by multi-lane roads and suburban sprawl. It was far from an inclusive vision either. By proposing an idealized alternative to downtown, removed from actual downtown, shielded from the elements only accessible by car and designed solely for shopping, Gruen, and this is from, I believe this is from The Guardian, Gruen had created a mechanism to protect white middle-class homeowners from those unlike themselves, which is, I think it's a fair thing to say. We don't go downtown.
Right.
That's something you still hear. I've heard that all my life.
Yeah.
And we avoid downtown. Okay. I hear you. I understand.
Mm.
Very interesting. So Gruen is already having unforeseen consequences. He's a bit of a Frankenstein, and the mall is his monster. It's alive. It's alive, and they're shopping.
Right. Wild.
So I've got a little bit of his writing on Southdale. Well, this is so fun too, because there's a little sign that says, "This is how Southdale will serve you." Can you see that?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
This is how Southdale will serve you, Mrs. Shopper. Suppose some January morning a few years from now, it will probably take about 2.5 years to complete the project. You make a list of things you have to do that day. Have Junior's haircut. Get yourself a shampoo and wave. Have new lifts put in your black pumps. Buy sister a sweater and skirt. Buy the family groceries. Look at material for living room draperies. Pick up your suit at the cleaners. Take the small radio to be repaired. An appointment with the dentist. Sounds like a big day, doesn't it? And to top it all off, it's below zero, and there's snow in the air. And so Southdale solves that problem, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I can see the appeal. I see the appeal.
Yeah.
Yep. So let's see here. This arrangement opened a new set of possibilities. By eliminating signs and displays on the outer side, large savings would be achieved. Each individual business could use its rented space, which would be directed at only one internal entrance, more efficiently, and the exterior of the two-story building complex could be designed in a uniform manner without any corporate branding. Southdale was the first indoor air-conditioned, introverted shopping center in the world. Since the entire complex of buildings enjoyed the same climatic conditions, there were further savings. Double doors to the shops necessary for an open center could be totally eliminated. You could even go one step further and establish so-called open glass fronts, which were closed only at night with glass sliding doors or gates. Due to these and many other special measures, the roofed air-conditioned center could compete economically very well with an open center. And he talks about his working relationship with the Daytons. Our working relationship with Dayton's in matters of compensation and partnership resembled the method we had established with Hudson's. Only in this way could we persuade Dayton's to perform the lengthy studies needed to confirm the concept. Because the Dayton brothers were convinced of the rightness of the design and technical proposals established in the preliminary stage, they had the courage to resist the warnings of business and real estate professionals claiming special knowledge about shopping centers. The unanimous opinion of all these so-called experts was that the idea of an indoor air-conditioned center as a single utopia could never be achieved technically or economically. It's too much. It's like landing on the moon.
Yeah, why can't it be achieved technically? Like, obviously, you could build a big building. You know what I mean?
I think they're thinking about the air conditioning. It's going to cost so much. I can hear it in thick Minnesota. Oh, it's going to cost. You know how much it's going to cost to cool Southdale there. Yeah. That's going to be real expensive. We're going to have to buy a lot of cardigans. For Dayton. Well, Dayton, they got a lot of money. Oh yeah, the Daytons, they sure do. It's going to be air conditioned year round, something like that. Yeah. I mean, it goes on. In terms of rental conditions, control on trademarks and tenants, parliament, and pre-rental contracts, we again followed the pattern we had worked out for Northland. Creatively, however, we were faced with a completely new situation. Because the public spaces were covered, there was greater concern that visitors might have the perception that no difference existed in the atmosphere of the public spaces versus the commercial ones. In order to dispel this impression, we gave special attention to the design of the covered pedestrian area. We wanted to create a kind of outdoor atmosphere, so we shaped the garden courtyard as a 3-story space and introduced a continuous glass surface on the north side of the 3rd floor. This glass surface generated a visual link with the outside world. Visitors could see the sky and the clouds at different times of day. With this direct exposure to daylight, it was possible even to plant trees and flowers on the floor, as well as alongside the balconies of the upper sales floor. A birdhouse, goldfish pond, and garden cafe enhanced this artificial outdoor character. All right. So there we go. We've got to the first mall. We did it. Victor Gruen. Okay.
And I imagine there's more. He designs many more.
It goes on and on and on and on and on. Yes. Yeah. I'm going to move along here. but I'm going to pause to say I will reference that Gladwell article and just read a little bit of it now. Because he invented the modern mall, Malcolm Gladwell, writing in the New Yorker, suggested that Victor Gruen may well have been the most influential architect of the 20th century.
I could buy that.
I would like to hear a different case.
I don't know enough about architecture, but yeah, that seems like a reasonable case for sure.
Find us in Telegram, t.me/artofdarkpod, Twitter @artofdarkpod. I think we're getting into hour 4 here, Brad. I'm going to try to bring us home. So we just hit 3 hours ish. First, I'm just going to ask you to do the thing where you tell me, where are you at with Victor Gruen right now?
Yeah, I mean, I can't disentangle him from the mall itself as a concept in a way. So I'm sort of I'm at this point where I kind of understand what his motivations are, but I'm a little I guess smirking at his naivete. And I keep thinking about, I wish I could remember the name of it. There's a person who beat SimCity 2000 a few years ago by creating this like perfectly balanced dystopia, and yet it's like he maxed out population, but he does it by doing all of these like sort of perverse controls. And this is what I think about like Gruen. It's like you start out, not just Gruen, but like the whole shopping mall as a project. You start out, you have the best of intentions. We're going to make this thing the best. It's going to serve everybody, and it's going to be valuable to the people who own it, but it's going to be just as valuable to the people who use the service. And then the next thing you know, you've got, well, we have like a weird mall part of town here in Detroit, and it's very alienating. And it's like it's like a 12-lane highway that goes through the middle of it, and it's just a lot of weirdly empty space. And it's just you just look at it and you're like,
light. Yeah,
and you're like, it didn't have to, and it's not even economically depressed, but you look at it, it's like, it didn't have to be like this, right? Like there had to have been another way to do this somehow. And the shopping mall is the first. And in the core of that neighborhood, that part of town, is what's called a super mall. It's the largest mall in Michigan. It's 1.5 million square feet. It's enormous. It's going out of business now, or it might already be out of business. But that's the centerpiece of this sort of very alienating, very like, it's one of these places where at night there's nothing happening. It's just, you know what I mean? Which is weird, right? When you go to a place and it's like, it's outfitted for 1 million people to be here at once, but at night there's nothing. Very striking and strange. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's tough. Just the audacity. I mean, again, just the idealism meeting reality.
Right.
And now we're going to get into it. So, all right, let me press on. Yeah. Moving forward now, he would build many more projects like this. Other architects would take this idea and run with it. You can't really patent this idea. It's at least I don't think so. I
wouldn't think so.
that's not the impression I got.
It's a big building. How are you gonna...
Right. He, in his career, he is also noted for various urban revitalization proposals, which he describes in his writings. And he actually did apply these in master plans for cities like Fort Worth, which I think was scuttled, Kalamazoo, Michigan, and Fresno, California in 1965. There's a documentary you can find. I think it's like a 1965-ish documentary from Victor Gruen Associates. And it's one of those old-timey 1960s Technicolor looking, a bright new Fresno, that kind of thing. You can find it on YouTube. You just look up Victor Gruen Associates documentary, you would find it. And it's all about this new plan for Fresno that's going to be less oriented toward the car. He totally turned on the car. As he went along, because he saw the car as the reason that his vision for the mall could not be achieved.
Yeah, he's not wrong, right?
No, he's not wrong, but you're not going to get Americans to give up their cars either. So it's kind of a moot point, isn't it? Yeah. He was also the designer of the first outdoor pedestrian mall in the United States, the Kalamazoo Mall. Are you familiar with this?
I'm not. I know Kalamazoo a little bit, but I've never been to that mall.
It was built for $60,000. It opened in 1959, and it's just a little kind of walkable area in the middle of Kalamazoo. So a relatively small project.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So within a decade of Southdale, Gruen ruefully acknowledged that what had once been a new building type became common worldwide. Gruen saw the suburban shopping mall become ubiquitous. In the 5th chapter of his memoir, he analyzed the reason why. Instead of creating cohesive communities, his idealistic vision for the shopping mall ultimately failed its original intent. He criticized developers for co-opting his original ideas and deleting non-commercial spaces. Well, of course, making malls into selling machines. This is America, buddy. Legitimately, what are you thinking?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
He came to see these single-purpose centers taking up great swaths of land and wholly dependent upon automobiles as an environmental sacrifice. He also realized that suburban malls actually hastened decentralization and fragmentation of the city centers, and blamed developers for building gigantic shopping malls on the outskirts of cities that have made the city centers into empty shells. And so he turned his efforts to a re-examination of urban renewal, laying out a core group of principles based upon memories of his beloved Vienna. Again, we're going to remember Vienna.
Yeah, we're going to try to turn America into Vienna again. It didn't work. This didn't stick the first time.
Maybe you should have worked harder to understand America, buddy, is what I would sort of say here. Yeah. But also, by the way, getting paid handsomely along the way.
Oh,
here.
yeah.
Making a fortune. Right, and then wringing your hands. Oh, I made a fortune, but they
just
didn't
that
idea.
Woody Harrelson gif where he's wiping tears away with $100 bills.
Away with money, exactly. It's a bit of that. So I find it all very frustrating.
Yeah.
In the first of these plans for the city of Fort Worth, Texas, these principles included the removal and rerouting of automobile traffic from the city core to either underground or concentric ring roads surrounding the core, the repurposing of land in the core, which had previously been devoted to the automobile, to add amenities such as parks, squares, and promenades, and the introduction of local and express public transportation that would radiate out in all directions. In Fort Worth, Gruen included I like Fort Worth. It's just hard to imagine this there. Gruen included an analysis of the likelihood of successful revitalization based upon a comparison of actual projects within democratic, autocratic, and communist political systems, the US, Iran, and Russia, and was forced to conclude that each project was subject to financial, political, and public input in varying degrees. None worked perfectly well.
Sure.
While the weight of his disillusionment was palpable, his ideas concerning revitalization to invigorate moribund city centers remained influential, and some of his projects, such as the Faneuil Hall in Boston, were successful. So I've got a little bit about the growth of the firm here, and then a visit to Russia, and then the White House. I want to get this stuff in because now he's a star. The dude is like a star at this point. So let's see here. In the late 60s, Victor Gruen Associates was one of the 20 largest architectural firms in the United States. In 1967, we employed about 300 people in 3 offices in LA, New York, and Washington, D.C. Our scope had grown enormously. Along with the design of individual buildings such as shops, homes, banks, department stores, office buildings, apartment buildings, and religious and cultural monuments, we were increasingly winning long-term contracts for projects such as shopping centers within and outside cities, satellite towns, regional plans, and general plans for the future development of large cities. We took on projects in Canada, South America, Australia, Europe, and Iran. We began to recognize that large-scale projects took many years, even decades to complete, and usually required political commitment and compromise. My partners and I had to become active in the political arena at the levels of city, state, and federal government. Our political commitment should be mentioned here. I contributed to the urban planning elements of the electoral program of John F. Kennedy and during the presidency of LBJ. I collaborated with the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Robert Weaver, and the Secretary of the Interior, Stuart Udall, in a study on how to develop new cities on yet undeveloped terrain. This last project involved the very feasible goal of curbing excess population growth in existing urban areas while making model improvements to existing city cores. He's become a full-blown spook / planner.
This is
social engineer.
It's so frustrating. Yeah, the social engineering thing. It's like, well, I had this one great idea and we implemented it. And 10 years later, what a mistake. But what I'm gonna do. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, this is what I mean. It's just a bit of hubris, a lot of hubris.
Yeah, take the L, scale back, and you can still make a handy living on small single projects, right?
I'm going to come out here and say this on this podcast. This dude was never a socialist. Never.
Not really. No.
Not really. Because a real socialist doesn't come to the United States and do this. And I mean, no offense to him or his estate or whatnot, but give me a break. Right. I mean, listen to this. All right, he's a capitalist now. Let's just say that. Let's just say many such cases of hippies who went out to the woods and we were living in a commune. Now I own one of the largest architectural firms in the United States. And I helped John F. Kennedy plan his, campaign strategy around urban development. Right. But I'm still a hippie at heart. Right. Where's my red scarf?
Right.
Our growth also led to financial difficulties, particularly with the rise in production and overhead costs. An increasing proportion of the partners' time and energy had to be devoted to administrative and organizational tasks, so the time for creative activities decreased. Nevertheless, we were barely able to resist this urge for growth. He's become one of us, one of us. Google gobble. He's an American now, baby.
Victor, have you stopped resisting growth? Have you allowed growth to enter your heart? Yeah.
Yeah. So he has a little bit about some time in Russia here, which I think is very interesting. What happens to city planning in a communist state, which is indeed dedicated to a planned economy and in which the profit motive is eliminated since everything belongs to the state? We hope to get an answer to this question in 1963 when a delegate of 14 Russian colleagues visited our offices in LA as part of a tour sponsored by the U.S. State Department. 2 interpreters were present because the State Department thought that a second one should monitor the Russian translator to make sure he translated everything accurately. They gave them a presentation. There's some vodka. The Russians were very civilized guests, brought us gifts of art and architecture books, one of which was on old Russian churches. My wife received caviar and small folk art objects, which were obviously mass produced. And then during the cocktail hour, the Russians drank American whiskey while the Americans preferred Russian vodka. When the tongues began to loosen, a lively debate developed, but it was not about the pros and cons of professional activity in one or the other economic system. Rather, it was about the rivalry between city planners and architects. Soon 2 parties formed, one of Russian and American planners, the other of Russian and American architects. During the meal, I made a toast to the friendship of both peoples. But when I proposed a second toast to the fruitful cooperation of planners and architects, the head of the Russian delegation, a planner, stood up and shouted, "Niet!" He explained that such a thing would be impossible, and the American planners agreed. Despite this exchange, the evening proceeded in high spirits. We made acquaintances that proved helpful when we took a study trip to Russia in autumn that year. So that's wild that he's like actually going to Russia during this time. Yeah. In Moscow, we were accompanied by the inevitable in-tourist tour guide. We admired the official tourist attractions in Moscow. This all while the gulags are happening, of course.
Right.
And we're impressed by the exemplary maintenance, especially of the churches. The subway, whose neo-Baroque design shocked me a little, was great. On rides through newer parts of town, we saw main streets of enormous breadth lined under sterile apartment buildings of low quality. Here and there was a modern department store with sparsely stocked shelves. One got the impression that the planners of the new Moscow had a mixture of Paris and New York in mind. The broad boulevards were Parisian, and the skyscrapers where public institutions were housed represented New York. Our expectation that neon signs would not exist in a communist country was disappointed. The names of state enterprises and political slogans were all announced with impressive neon lights.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I like that fact. Yeah. Then this is a little bit of him at the White House. Let's see here. This is a fun anecdote. This is a little saucy. So I was able to be at the meeting in D.C. in time. The committee consisted of about a dozen members, including the mayor of Washington, D.C., who was named George Washington, and who was a black man. Okay, thanks for the details. Stuart Udall, the U.S. Secretary of the Interior, Lawrence Rockefeller, and other important personalities of the city. The chairmanship was held by the first lady, Mrs. Lady Bird Johnson, who seemed a bit insecure in her new role. She opened the meeting by reading a prepared statement. Millions of people visited the nation's capital annually, she said, and as a symbol of the country, Washington should therefore be beautiful. The beautification of Washington with flower beds was a national task, and the committee should realize this task. The discussion that followed focused merely on cosmetic beauty. One wealthy lady offered a donation of hundreds of blooming azalea bushes, which was gratefully accepted. Wow, could you do less? Finally, I interrupted the we have to flowers are going to make this better. Just like the level of just horror in America is just so staggering. Finally, I interrupted the discussion. The objective of beautifying the national capital was highly commendable, I said, but it was unclear whether azalea bushes would improve street scenes in the slums or whether they would merely accentuate the urban misery even more. Hey, we're on the same page there, Victor. Mm-hmm. Beautification should intervene more deeply than simply removing ugliness. I asked for permission to ask Mrs. Johnson a personal question. When you get up in the morning, do you wash your face first and then put on your makeup, or vice versa? Mrs. Johnson blushed and said, I wash myself first, of course. In addition, I understand your question. Before our next meeting, I'll consider the slums thoroughly. After the meeting, I offered the Secretary of the Interior my resignation since I believed I had embarrassed or even offended Mrs. Johnson. Mr. Udall laughed and said I should simply continue acting in this way because that was exactly what he had hoped I would do. Later, the committee's work began to change because of the insights Mrs. Johnson gained on a series of walks through the city. Issues of urban renewal and the housing shortage came to the fore. So this is very interesting. The entire committee took bus tours out into some of the more troubled areas of the city. When we visited one of the black ghettos, the committee group was surrounded by hundreds of women. Their men were working. After several appeals to her, Mrs. Johnson decided to deliver a short speech on the porch of one family's home. In a warm, easy manner, she spoke of the problems that were common to all women, concerns about their husbands, their finances, and especially their children. A wave of sympathy washed over her. To the dismay of her security detail, she went into the crowd where the women hugged and kissed the First Lady. When she returned to us, Mrs. Johnson seemed deeply moved. A little anecdote there.
Yeah, okay.
Geez. Yeah, but what's happened since then? Okay, let's press on. You still with me, Brad?
I am. Yeah, I'm
hanging
just thinking about. I'm thinking about Lady Bird Johnson. You know?
Lady Bird Johnson, doing her best and scaring the hell out of the Secret Service. I mean, that was after Kennedy, obviously.
Right. Not long after, right?
Yikes. Yep. Until the mid-1970s, his office designed over 50 shopping malls in the United States. So he's already expressed regret,
right?
Now in the mid-70s, we're still designing.
That if you pull the arm on that slot machine one more time, you might get it right. Yeah. It pays out every single time.
Yes, I'll build another mall. Gruen was the principal architect for a luxury housing development built on the 48-acre site of Boston, Massachusetts' former West End neighborhood. The first of several Gruen towers and plazas was completed in 1962. This development, known as Charles River Park, is regarded by many as a dramatically ruthless reimagining of a former immigrant tenement neighborhood. In 1956, Gruen drafted a comprehensive revitalization plan for the central business district of downtown Fort Worth, but most of the components were never realized. And it goes on. This is from the Gladwell article, which was written in.
If we go back just a second, so he designed these Gruen towers, and it was a how did you describe a ruthless revitalization of the immigrant tenement?
Yeah, it was like a ruthless reimagining of. I don't have it in front of me anymore.
I'd like to do is I'd like to make a tenement building, but like not as it's all the amenities of a tenement of an immigrant tenement. But for the modern American worker,
Does it still exist? What I wonder. I think it might. Yeah. I mean, this is like project housing.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Yeah. Those always work out. Those always work out really well.
Yeah. I wonder how much you got paid to build the socialist housing. Sorry, I can't help myself. It's just like we live in such a freaky timeline. It's just like it's staggering. All right. This is Gladwell. Once in the mid-50s, Victor Gruen sat down with a writer from the New Yorker's talk of the town to give his thoughts on how to save New York City. The interview, just a little thing, come and save this city that you only known for 10 years.
Right.
The interview took place, and this is a story about hubris. And this is true of so many of the artists that we cover. But in Victor Gruen's case, had an incredible influence on millions, billions of lives.
Right.
I guess somebody's got to do it, but my gosh.
Yeah.
Anyway. Yeah. How do you save New York City? The interview took place in Gruen's stylish offices on West 12th Street in an old Stanford white building. And one can only imagine the reporter rapt as Gruen held forth, eyebrows bristling. First, Gruen said Manhattan had to get rid of its warehouses and its light manufacturing. Then all the surface traffic in Midtown, the taxis, buses, and trucks had to be directed into underground tunnels. He will build the tunnels. He wanted to put superhighways around the perimeter of the island, buttressed by huge double-decker parking garages. The jumble of tenements and townhouses and apartment blocks that make up Manhattan would be replaced by neat rows of 150-story residential towers arrayed along a ribbon of gardens, parks, walkways, theaters, and cafes.
Yeah.
Mr. G lowered his brows and glared at us. You are troubled by all those tunnels, are you not? He inquired. You wonder whether there is room for them in the present underground jungle of pipes and wires. Do you never think about how absurd it is to bury beneath tons of solid pavement equipment that is bound to go on in the blink from time to time? He leaped from his chair and thrust an imaginary pneumatic drill against his polished study floor. Rat-a-tat-tat, he exclaimed. Night and day, tear up the streets, then pave them, then tear them up again. Flinging aside the imaginary drill, he threw himself back in his chair. In my New York of the future, all pipes and wires will be strung along the upper sides of those tunnels above a catwalk accessible to engineers and painted brilliant colors to delight rather than appall the eye.
Oh my God.
I'm going to stop doing the accent.
Wait, so his plan is basically bulldoze Manhattan, start over.
I gotta think that what we're dealing with a little bit here, there's a little flim-flammery here.
Yeah.
I had not thought about that before, but I am a showman from Vienna, and this is my architectural firm, and I will create a shopping engine for you.
Right.
And monorail. I will triple you.
Monorail.
Yeah, monorail. Yeah,
we put Edina, Minnesota on the map. Yeah. It's a little bit of that for sure.
There's a lot of that. So this guy, he knows how to entrance an audience. He knows how to get attention. He's a showman.
Yeah, definitely. Well, his plan for New York is it's almost a farce. I mean, sure, New York has planning problems, and I'm sure things could have been done differently along the way. Whatever, but we'll get rid of everything.
I don't think it's a serious plan. I think he's just trying to get attention, and it's a little bit of he's being provocative and. Dude, that Victor Gruen, he's up to something. Yeah, I might want to. I'm building that. I got that new idea. I got that plot of land in Dubuque.
Yeah, that's a wild idea. Let's give him a couple $100,000 and see what he says about our town.
Exactly.
Yeah,
right. That's what he's doing. It's a sales job.
Mm-hmm.
Post-war America was an intellectually insecure place, and there was something intoxicating about Gruen's sophistication and confidence. That was what took him so dramatically from standing at New York Harbor with $8 in his pocket to Broadway to Fifth Avenue and to the heights of Northland and South Dale. He was a European intellectual, an emigre, and in the popular mind, the European emigre represented vision, the gift of seeing something grand in the banality of post-war American life. When the European visionary confronted a drab and congested urban landscape, he didn't tinker or equivocate. He leveled warehouses and buried roadways and came up with a thrilling plan for making things right. The chief means of travel will be walking, Green said. Nothing like walking for peace of mind. At Northland, he said, and now what's weirder than mall walkers? What's more uncanny and just off? Do it if you got to do it. But it's just this is what we are. We drive to walk.
Right.
We drive to walk.
Right.
Yeah. At Northland, he said, thousands of people would show up, even when the stores were closed, just to walk around. It was exactly like Sunday on the Ringstrasse. With the building of the mall, old world Europe had come to suburban Detroit.
Yeah. Thanks, Victor. Really appreciate it.
All right. So we are closing in. This is a little bit about his return to Vienna. Let me see. Which page did I have here?
Oh, so he goes back to Vienna.
Yeah, he goes back to Vienna. I want to make sure that I have it. Let's see. Oh, here it is. Well, I'm not sure I have the right page. Well, in any case. One moment. So this is he does end up going back to Vienna, and it's quite a big transition for him, obviously. Let me see if I have it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I actually have the page, so I'm going to move past that. I'll come back to it. No worries. Let's see. I'll read a little bit from here. Let's see. Well, he meets his fourth wife. So let me cover that first. And this is a funny story because his handling of this is really kind of wild. Okay. Did I get onto the third wife?
I don't even remember you mentioning the third wife.
Oh no. Yeah. Oh my God. Did I forget the third? Sorry. At some point he broke with the second wife, the one that they had the children. Yeah. And then let me just make sure. I just want to make sure I can get this right. Mm-hmm. He would meet his third wife, Lisette van Houten, and they would get a divorce. But that was before he moved back to Vienna, and he would move back to Vienna with Lisette.
Okay.
So yeah, maybe missed a beat there, but he was very, very, very busy, and he got with Lizzie. They grew apart professionally, which I described earlier. And the impression I get is that he was already stepping out. So it was a pretty smooth transition for Victor.
Yeah.
So yeah, here it is. These professional developments were also influenced by personal experiences, both joyful and tragic. I had a happy marriage with Lisette von Houten, and I'm sorry, part of the reason that I kind of I don't feel like I flubbed it, but the reason that it's a little bit wonky there is that it's wonky in his writing.
Right.
Like, oh, and by the way, I got divorced and got married, and I'm going to cover it in a paragraph about between different projects. So,
right.
Yeah. I had a happy marriage with Lisette von Houten, whom I had married after divorcing Elsie in 1952. Lisette and I lived in our New York apartment and sometimes shared a small house in Brentwood, a western suburb of LA. We traveled a lot and spent our vacations in different European countries every year. Lisette, who was originally from Ohio, particularly loved the Austrian countryside. So it happened that every year we spent at least 1 week at the Hotel Weißes Rössl on the Wolfgangsee. Oof. It was, yikes. It was there that we met a charming girl named Kamija Salahefendich in 1959. She worked in the hotel business. From friendly discussions, we learned that Kamija had been only 8 years old when she had fled from the Yugoslav War and partisan turmoil of 1945, in which her father was killed and her siblings were lost. She had arrived all alone in the south of Carinthia, where a peasant family took her in. We offered to adopt this extremely lovable and capable young girl. She rejected this idea and said that she would like to continue her independent life, but she had offered us her friendship. From that moment, we maintained a lively correspondence and met her regularly during our summer vacations. Let's see here. So we need to meet her.
Wait, she doesn't. Okay, go ahead. I just had a premonition. Go ahead.
Yeah, right. In 1960, Lisette suggested that we should buy a home in Vienna for our old age, and I agreed enthusiastically. In the 4th district at Schwarzenbergplatz, we acquired an apartment that had been reduced to a pile of rubble. As we inspected the devastation, parquet floors burned by fire, plaster knocked from the walls and ceilings, sinks and toilets ripped out, Lisette broke into tears. We could never build an apartment from these ruins, she cried. But for me, the task of setting up a modern apartment in a building built in 1890 was alluring. By 1974, it would be my main residence in Europe. After the contracts were awarded for the reconstruction of the apartment, we asked Kamija to monitor the work in our absence. She accompanied this with such skill that on our next holiday in the summer of 1961, we could have an informal housewarming party for some old friends in our new Vienna apartment. Lisette and Kamaja worked together to cater the event. All right. So now we're going to get into a little bit of an event here. In 1962, I traveled to Austria with my artistically talented daughter, Peggy, who planned to attend artist Oskar Kokoschka's summer academy in Salzburg. I stayed briefly in Vienna to visit Kamaja and to see our finished apartment. And one evening, I had a long telephone conversation with Lisette. A few hours later, at 3 a.m., I received a phone message that my wife had suffered a stroke and died in our home in L.A.
Whoa.
Completely bewildered. This is Art of Darkness.
Yeah.
Completely bewildered, I returned to L.A. It was only the loving care of my son Michael that prevented me from having a nervous breakdown. The meetings with the greedy undertakers were disgusting. I took care of Lisette's will and estate and arranged for the future care of her elderly mother. After that, it was impossible for me to continue living in LA and New York in the homes where I had lived with my wife. Likewise, it seemed to me impossible to take up my work in the studio again. So I returned to Vienna to immerse myself in work. In order to forget my pain, I worked from early morning until late at night on the English manuscript for The Heart of Our Cities, which is a book he wrote detailing his theories. Kamaja ran the household, and one night during supper, she told me suddenly that she did not want to call me Papa anymore. She told me she had discovered quite a different feeling for me.
Uh-oh.
In my grief, I took note of this remark only superficially, and I reflected on its full meaning only much later. I left Vienna after a few months. Kamaja, who had become a beautician, remained in the apartment there. In LA, I took up my work again, but I was overwhelmed with invitations to social events. Soon I noticed that these were well-intentioned attempts to set me up with a new female companion. He's a hot property. He's got a lot of money. Very talented guy.
Yeah.
International man.
Right.
Man of mystery. He's got 2 passports. He's met the first lady.
Yeah. He's a big deal.
He made the first lady blush.
Yeah.
But these temptations left me cold, and my thoughts wandered back to Vienna to that girl who did not want to call me Papa anymore. All right. Telling her that one of my friends who resembled me in character and appearance needed a housekeeper, I invited her to come to America. Her response was prompt. She accepted, but only on the condition that the aforesaid friend not only resembled me, but was identical to me. At Christmas of 1962, I met Kamaja in New York. From there, we traveled to LA. The happy ending of that story is, in spite of the frowns of many friends and acquaintances about our age difference of 33 years, Kamaja and I were married on February 28th of 1963. Yeah.
Wow. Age gap. That's a
hefty gap. And this is a gal who you offered to adopt and who called you Papa until your wife died.
Yeah.
So little fringe case here. Yeah. Let's read a little more of his deep introspection on this. Besides love, a Pygmalion-like idea on my part may have also played a role. Perhaps I wanted to show the world to an orphan from Bosnia and to shape her. But I soon discovered that a shaping occurred in the opposite direction. With her incredible adaptability and great wisdom, her love and youthful enthusiasm, I was inspired with new energy to undertake new adventures, new work, and a new way of life. That paragraph is one of the biggest cliches I've read for the show yet. That is just like Chat GPT of cope.
Right.
Cope. Yeah, I'm not going to read anymore.
Can't do it.
Yeah, I can't do it anymore. I hope you're enjoying this episode of Art of Darkness, a core episode about the great troubled life of Victor Gruen. Brad, I hope you're having a good time. We're rounding the bend.
We've been quite cynical about him and his achievements, and I think fairly so, knowing where they go, knowing how they end up. But we do have to admit that he's a man of vision. I suppose he's a man who's able to decide he's going to do something and carry it out. He's clearly a man of tremendous will.
He's a genius.
Right.
Yeah, they said it couldn't be done. The Dayton family was being tapped on their shoulders, I'm sure, by lots of people with Minnesota accents and then other accents saying, there's no way this is you can't do this.
Right.
Yeah.
And they did it, and it redefined the way that an important part of the economy operates, and thereby culture. So we can lament the impact of this, but it is an interesting case, right? It's like, it's
well, and we can take off our irony cell cynicism for a moment and go, sometimes you just want to go to a freaking mall.
Yeah.
And like, I take my family to the mall because there's a little play center. My son can like, run around, whether it's raining or not. If there's snow on the ground, I can take him around. I go get myself a coffee. There's a very, very good mall in Minnesota. I'm not going to drop the name of the mall on the pod.
Right.
It's very good. It's got the food court is very modern and updated. It's got a bar in it. If you're into that, it's actually a place that you could kind of see like, you're not going to walk over to it.
Right.
But, you go drive over to it. You go watch a game. You maybe go get a little shopping done. You go on a date. It fulfills that function.
Yeah, it does do the thing in some way, not the full vision of not his full vision, but it does do some part of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, I think it is easy to kind of get cynical about these things, but he didn't understand where it was going to go. And that's kind of on him. But geez.
He didn't understand America.
He didn't understand America, and America is founded on this. This is something that America does. Is it takes dreams, idealistic dreams, and oftentimes makes them monstrous. It does this all often, right? So, I guess it's no surprise, but I just wanted to throw that in there because we have been throwing a lot of shade at Malls and Victor Gruen and definitely got to give him, if we're going to blame him, we should give some credit where it's due.
Absolutely. The only reason that I'm covering him is because he is a great genius, and he did create something that has had a huge impact on billions of lives. And we should reflect on it and look at his life and try to understand the origins of the fellow who invented this thing that is a major part of our lives.
Yeah. And not that we come up with like a moral for each show, but maybe there is something to be learned from all the lives we've covered. And maybe the thing for Victor Gruen is like, don't launch like civilization scale social engineering projects that you do not understand. Right, that you don't fully understand.
This is what they mean, man. America is the great experiment. They really mean it. And these centrist, or I don't even know what you call them, these the guys who are all about it. They love that. America's a great experiment. And it's like, bro, I want a country. I don't want an experiment. I don't want to be part of some experiment.
Right. Hey, man, I live here.
Yeah, right. Hey, bro, my parents were born. You came here because the Austrian corporal didn't get into art school. Right. So now you're here.
Right.
Yeah. But we do suffer from this problem. And this is a very Minnesota thing, too. It's like, the guy from Vienna is going to tell us how to design. Right. No architect from Minnesota would ever get that commission. There's just no chance. He'd have to go to New York first or whatever. Right. Yeah. 100%. Right. Yeah, dude. We live in a simulation. In an immediate, direct way that isn't hypothetical or philosophically circle jerky at all. We explicitly live in a simulation.
Yeah. Interesting.
Interesting
way to put it.
Let's bring it on home. Home. All right. In 1964, Gruen lamented what had become of urban renewal, writing, "Many cities have misinterpreted the aims of urban renewal legislation by demolishing whole districts and by replacing lively environments which could have been rehabilitated with sterile, inhuman, and poorly planned projects." He would say, how high streets and shopping malls face a domino effect for major store closures. Gruen perhaps saw the writing on the wall. His hopes of recreating Vienna had been dashed. So surprise, America's never going to look like Vienna circa 1903, right?
Yeah. So I just see the monkey paw. I just see the finger of the monkey paw. Just tried to. Yeah. I wish America were more like Vienna. Yeah,
right, just death. So he returned to his hometown in the final decade of his life. Irony dealt him a final blow. Austria's first and largest mall, shopping center Süd, South, was already under construction just outside the old Vienna town center. Fun. That book, it's a monster. He unleashed a monster on the world, for sure. Yeah. So his book, The Heart of Our Cities, The Urban Crisis, Diagnosis, and Cure, was a big influence on Walt Disney's city planning ambitions and his ideas for the original Epcot. He returned in 1968 full-time to Vienna, where he engaged in the gradual transformation of the inner city into a pedestrian zone, of which only some parts have been implemented, including Kärtner, Strasse, and Graben. On his retirement in 1968 from Victor Gruen Associates, Gruen declared war on the automobile. He saw that fragmented cities necessitated the proliferation of individual car ownership. As an architect who valued fine-grained integration, he made the case for reducing this forced mobility. He also became an advocate for the architect's place in environmental planning and established a foundation to further public education about this then new concept. The foundation's work and his consulting activities refocused on Europe, and he returned to live in Vienna until his death. Victor Gruen's whimsical sketch of the architect-client relationship. This is an image from, I've got pulling this. That's very interesting. Hang on. To the extent that his memoir focused on his career, the woman who edited this included a supplemental chapter written by his son, Michael, which talks about the personal and family details that are kind of like left out. You probably caught a little bit that he calls it an ogrography or whatever, so it doesn't really have the full weight of a bio.
Right.
In the second chapter, Peggy writes a gentle defense against Gruen's harsh representations of her mother, Elsie, and so forth. The memoir gives priority to the work and not so much to the women. And that last wife, that is a bit of a dinger, isn't it?
It really is. Yeah. Jeez, man.
What do you think about that? I mean, 33-year age gap, and you were going to adopt her. That's pretty hardcore. Yeah.
That's intense. I mean, that seems to be a bit much to me, especially, I don't know. You can't find reason in the hearts of man, but geez, dude, it seems like you got some other options, but I don't know. I guess he's also a guy who kind of did whatever he wanted in a way. So why would he stop now? Right. He's a, multi-millionaire.
Right.
Geez.
Right. Yeah. Funny.
I disavow it.
Disavow. Yeah. That's a little much. Yeah, for sure. I've just been reading from Landscape Architecture magazine, and I found the sketch that I'd sort of read through there, and it's called How to Design a Store. And it's a little dude, like kind of a quasi stick figure with a scarf that says architect. He's got a huge hammer, and then sitting underneath the hammer getting smashed is the owner, sitting on a little stool that just says owner. That's how to design a store. You smash them.
No.
He's a complex character, man. A lot of threads in old Victor's head. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All right. So we're gonna read a little more from. We're almost at his death. We're gonna read a little more from Gladwell, then his son. Then we're gonna bring it in. Then we're gonna do After Dark. What Gruen had as well was an unshakable faith in the American marketplace. Malls teach us, he once said, that it's the merchants who will save our urban civilization. Planning isn't a dirty word to them. Good planning means good business. He went on. Sometimes self-interest has remarkable spiritual consequences. Gruen needed to believe this, as did so many European intellectuals from that period, dubbed by the historian Daniel Horowitz, celebrity emigres. They had fled a place of chaos and anxiety. And in American consumer culture, they sought a bulwark against the madness across the ocean. They wanted to find in the jumble of the American marketplace something as grand as the Vienna they had lost, the place where the unconscious was meticulously dissected by Dr. Freud on Berggasse, and where shrines to European civilization, to the Gothic, the Baroque, the Renaissance, and the ancient Greek traditions were erected on the Ringstrasse. To Americans, nothing was more flattering than this. Who didn't want to believe that the act of leveling warehouses and burying roadways had spiritual consequences? But it was, in the end, too good to be true. This wasn't the way America worked at all. A few months ago, Alfred Taubman gave a speech to a real estate trade association in Detroit about the prospects for the city's downtown. This is in 2004. And one of the things he talked about was Victor Gruen's Northland. It was simply too big, Taubman said. Hudson's, the Northland anchor tenant, already had a flagship store in downtown Detroit. So why did Gruen build a 600,000 square foot satellite in Northland, just a 20-minute drive away? Satellites were best at 150,000 to 200,000 square feet. But at 600,000 square feet, they were large enough to carry every merchandise line that the flagship store carried, which meant no one had any reason to make the trek to the flagship anymore. Victor Gruen said the lesson of Northland was that the merchants would save urban civilization. He didn't appreciate that it made a lot more sense for his client to save civilization at 150,000 square feet than at 600,000 square feet. The lesson of America was that the grandest of visions could be derailed by the most banal of details, like the size of the retail footprint, or whether Congress set the depreciation allowance at 40 years or 20 years. When, late in life, Gruen came to realize this, it was a powerfully disillusioning experience. He revisited one of his old shopping centers and saw all the sprawling development around it and pronounced himself in severe emotional shock. Malls, he said, had been disfigured by the ugliness and discomfort of the land-wasting seas of parking around them. Developers were interested only in profit. I refuse to pay alimony for those bastard developments, he said in a speech in London in 1978. This was actually written in a letter, so I think Gladwell got this wrong, actually. He turned away from his adopted country. He had fixed up a country house outside of Vienna, and soon he moved back home for good. But what did he find when he got there? Just south of Old Vienna, a mall had been built. In his anguished words, a gigantic shopping machine. It was putting the beloved independent shopkeepers of Vienna out of business. It was crushing the life of his city. He was devastated. Victor Gruen invented the shopping mall in order to make America more like Vienna. He ended up making Vienna more like America.
Brutal.
Now his son tells brutal on many levels.
Yeah. So this is the thing. I guess one thing I want to say to it, just before we get to that, because I just kind of observed this. Gruen mentions the developers who are only interested in money. I do think Gruen wasn't only interested in money. I do think he was an idealist who happens to make a lot of money and probably liked making a lot of money. But then this idea that he's going to work with developers, real estate developers or building developers, or business developers, and be shocked that they're only interested in money, that's in like the definition of being a developer. That's what the job is to just and then to be like, you didn't consider the fact that there's a social fabric to be concerned with. It's just there's a naivete that runs so deep. It'd be adorable if it wasn't so disastrous.
Yeah, I think he's a lot sharper than that, and I think that he presented a certain style, and I think he probably justified it by saying, well, I'm in America, I will do as the Americans do, but I will try to sneak in some of these other ideas. So I actually have a little bit about this, and then we are coming in. One thing about Gruen is that his death, it's very unclear like how he died. It's literally just described as a long illness. And at some point he couldn't eat. So it might've been some sort of a cancer, or it's really hard to find. Like I looked it up. It's very ambiguous. So it could just be very private. They don't want it. Who knows? Let's see here. A journalist asked me recently how my father, this is the son, as a socialist, could have done so much to promote the financial interests of capitalist businessmen. I really did not see much of an issue there, and I doubt my father would have. His great interest was in bettering the lives of the general populace, regardless of individual wealth or lack of it. That some would make a buck off his ideas was not, I believe, of any consequence to him, so long as he was fairly compensated for his professional services. Well, there you have it.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Aside from being a visionary, he was a practical man and would not have let such an incidental manner as who would build a shopping center get in the way of its getting built. What bothered him much more was the short-sightedness of some of the businessmen he dealt with in failing to develop the land around shopping centers into communities that would not only provide profits in themselves, but also support the shopping centers as focal points for local populaces and diminish the prospect of competitive magnetic centers. As he writes in his book, he thought governmental planning would do better, but later experience with governmental bureaucracy made him doubt that view. Is a government respecter who figured, yeah, they'll get it right. No, they won't.
Right.
Not when it comes to that much money trading hands that quickly. We build the mall. We buy the lots all around it. We build the mall. We sell the lots to our friends who build the houses, who sell the houses at a premium. We build the gas stations.
Yeah.
See, this is the other thing. They got their cut all around it. We build the little bank.
Right.
We build the strip mall next to the mall. We build the housing development next door. We build the Target. We own all of it. And maybe it looks like it's different corporations, but it's really kind of fundamentally one corporation sitting underneath it all that owns the land.
Owns the land, right?
Yeah, and possibly the building. Yeah, one of my favorite fun facts is the family that owns the Mall of America. They're Potter Familia. They're a Jewish Iranian family. They're Potter Familia. The way the family tells the story is he was like a rug salesman, a rug merchant in Iran. Hosted the Tehran conference. Hosted Stalin. Would it have been Roosevelt or Eisenhower? He hosted and Churchill. At the
as a humble rug merchant,
right? As a humble rug merchant, and they own the big mall in Iran, and then the mall in the Mall of America, or the big mall in Edmonton, rather. Excuse me. Yeah, right. I want to make sure I get it right. Yeah, it was Roosevelt, not Eisenhower. It was Roosevelt, Churchill, and Stalin. Yeah, and now we have a billionaire family. We own a bunch of malls now,
right?
In Canada, and America.
Right. Yeah. Mall of America. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. Fun fact. Fun fact about the Mall of America. Yeah. I bet these guys know a lot about Victor Gruen. I bet they have a lot of opinions about Victor Gruen. Oh yeah.
Oh, I'm sure they do. Yeah.
You gotta give them some props. That's a big accomplishment, the Mall of America.
Yeah.
It's the thing.
Yeah.
But in any case, so let's see here. I've got one more bit here from the Sun. Let's see. I kind of want to trouble this a little bit. So because this one narrow perception that Gruen was totally, I disavow them all, is not accurate. In February of 1978, my father gave a speech in London complaining of the failures of shopping center development. M. Jeffrey Hardwick construes the speech as bitter self-denunciation and renunciation of the entire intellectual patrimony of my father had created in siring the shopping mall. Gruen looked at what he had built and despised what he saw, Hardwick writes, adding as proof of the bitter spirit of repudiation of his life's work that my father pronounced from the podium, "I refuse to pay alimony for those bastard developments." I suppose this pithy phrase that pithy phrases are their own worst enemies. They invite easy recollection and equally easy forgetting of the context that defined their meaning. In this instance, Hardwick hangs a whole concluding chapter describing end-of-life dejection and rejection on the "no alimony for bastard developments" quote. But in fact, the phrase does not appear in the speech. Rather, it appears 10 months later in a journalist's syndicated column, a venue that doubtless gave my father little to no control over the bon mots, context, or construction. My father mentioned the phrase to me and seemed pleased by its clever summation of his feelings about being dubbed father of the shopping mall, and thereby being implicitly held responsible for the multitudinous errors of other architects, other planners, other developers, and absence of government oversight in allowing a good idea to get out of hand. The speech reflects that he distinguished between the shopping centers he had designed and lesser imitations. He was disappointed that others had extracted the most superficial, formulaic aspects of his shopping center concept without also inserting the soul. Yes, they imitated the enclosed malls, but they made them into nothing more than shopping machines, removing all the social and cultural characteristics that made a Gruen shopping mall a center of social activity that people visited even when the stores were closed. They omitted the careful planning for diversity in leasing and chose to lease overwhelmingly to chain establishments with name brands rather than to a variety of stores, including mom and pop businesses offering unique products. Far from reflecting the despair of a man approaching death and repenting for the sins of a lifetime, as Hardwick paints the picture, the London speech is a hard-headed assessment of undisciplined abuse by others of the Gruen shopping mall formula and of dramatically changed circumstances, coupled with a prescription by a self-described incurable optimist for creating better ecological and human environments by promoting urban clusters with small-grained intermingling of social and usage categories. The speech defends the original purpose of introducing multifaceted urbanity to the then wasteland of suburban life in America. So there's his son running cover for him and saying that Hardwick in this book, and then, of course, by extension, Gladwell, take that one quote out of context and draw this whole summary conclusion. Whereas Victor just blames everybody else for taking his idea and bastardizing it. And okay. Maybe a Victor Gruen shopping mall is extraordinarily special and unique, and it's been a while since I've been to Southdale. And again, he's right. There are some good malls and some bad malls. It'd be like blaming Louis Armstrong for like terrible jazz vocals that you go and listen to on some level.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's
not Satchmo's fault. That middle-aged woman is doing that on stage right now. But you're still forced to listen to it. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. So I can see it's a good argument. Yeah. It's a good argument. Yeah. And I'd be hard pressed to sort of actually, if you put the scales together like he did on, when he was in trouble for his little political theatrical event, like, is the mall in your life, Brad Kelly, like a net negative or a net positive? I don't know.
That's a good question. It's the I think the positives are easier to identify and the negatives are more nebulous and have second and third order effects on the community at large. So they're a little harder to measure, right?
Yeah, and it feels insidious that
that's
way.
A good question. But I like
question. But I like my mall.
Yeah, right.
I like my mall.
Right.
What do you like? The Banana Republic is in the mall. I got a $12 pair of slacks there once.
Right. Yeah. Go there and then you go to the clearance area. It's great. Yeah.
100%. All right.
Well, that was fun, man. That was wow. I didn't know anything about Gruen, and
I'm glad you enjoyed it. Yeah, and I'm pretty much done. Let me just wind it down. So Gruen died on Valentine's Day, February 14th in 1980. He lived to see 1980 after a long kind of undisclosed illness. There was a little legal case after the fact, which I want to read about, Gruen versus Gruen. In 1963, on his 21st birthday, Michael Gruen, who we were just reading from, who was then a Harvard undergraduate. Wow, they did good. They did well in America, didn't they?
Yeah, they did all right.
Was given a painting, Schlosskammer am Attersee 2 by Gustav Klimt. Okay.
Oh,
you're at Harvard, and Klimt has given you a painting for your 21st birthday. Cool. Well, ownership of the painting was given to his son in 1963. The elder Gruen continued to hang it in his living room and even paid for insurance and repairs. So this painting is yours, but it stays at home with Papa.
Right.
Upon Gruen's death in 1980, his widow, Kamaija, refused to surrender the painting to Michael, resulting in a landmark case in the New York Supreme Court and Court of Appeals. The Court of Appeals ruled the basis of inter vivos gifts, including the plaintiff having the burden of proof to a clear and convincing standard that the chattel was a gift and that the required elements of a gift. Kamaija Gruen claimed that if the painting was to be given after death, even if such arrangement was made years earlier, then the will, not a letter, would be instructive as to disposition. Michael Gruen was eventually awarded $2.5 million.
Okay. Jeez. But he didn't get the painting.
It sounds like he did not.
Mm.
He did not get the painting.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
the painting,
so
2.5 million is not too hard to swallow, I suppose.
Pays
Wild.
for your
Yeah,
Harvard undergrad and then
Kamaja was
some.
savvy, man. Yeah, Kamaja is a survivor, man. She isn't gonna just let go of something easily, right?
33 years his junior. Yeah.
Yeah, she didn't marry that old man to get that painting stolen out from
100%.
her.
I'm gonna watch that. I'm gonna look at that painting. Well, and that is the life and death and afterlife.
Yeah.
And we can talk about the legacy of the mall, and maybe we will a little bit on the After Dark for Patreon. This is our second core episode of the year. We do 2 of these a month, and then we also do dark rooms. We do watch parties. We do the book club. If you're a fan, if you're a new listener, check out the Patreon, patreon.com/artofdarkpod. On the Patreon today, we're going to talk about when Gruen met Einstein, and we're going to talk about when their friend dressed up as a stormtrooper to help get their luggage out when they escaped from the Nazis in Vienna and came to America. Brad, what would Victor Gruen be doing today?
I don't know. I feel like he'd still have some pie in the sky plan for making centrally planned some kind of centrally planned city shopping thing. I don't even know what it would look like at this point, but I feel like he's never going to give up that dream of like socially engineering some kind of plan to make lives better in some way, or at least selling that idea at the very least.
Well, and hasn't some of this type of stuff has seeped in like Dubai? Isn't Dubai like a completely planned city like this? And people say it's just extraordinary, So
yeah. So no, I think that's true. Right.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think? What do you think he'd be doing?
Yeah, I think he'd still be describing himself as an eternal optimist when in fact he is an ideologue but also is able to double deal in his own mind at the same time. So he can, I don't doubt that he believed he was adhering to some sort of left-wing socialist principles, even when he was cashing the checks. I have no doubt in my mind that he was squaring that circle, and maybe he did. I haven't achieved the success of someone like Victor Gruen.
Right.
No first lady has had me over. So, perhaps there is something to be said for walking the line between your ideals and then actualizing things. But I think fundamentally he's a tragic case, but I don't think he would have ever learned. I don't think he would have ever said,
no.
Oh, I'm a little bit sorry about that. Now I drive around Minnesota. It's a little, I don't know, I mean, and then also like the racial reckoning that's been going on in this country since the 60s and how this plays into that dynamic. And I wonder what he would think about all of that. Yeah. And at the end of his life, he dropped this little ideological bomb on the American suburbs, and then I'll just go back to Vienna now.
I'll just go back to
I don't want to see these ugly places. Now I'll just go back, and have my beautiful life in Vienna now. So but I honestly I came away from this liking him more because of the flimflammery and the showman, because that dude's an honorary American. Victor Gruen, honorary American.
Right. Oh yeah.
Played the game at a very high level. Not Don Draper in terms of looks or ethnic background or anything of the sort, but definitely a Don Draper type. He is in his little bow tie. Right. He comes into the sales meeting. Yeah. You're from Des Moines, right? Or from Fort Worth. You've got some oil money. First you had cattle money. Now you have oil money. Yeah. And this Viennese, this sophisticated Viennese comes in with a bow tie and he says, tunnels. We are going to build tunnels. Okay. Well, have a seat, partner. I want to hear what this Austrian fella has to say. All right, you gonna come back for the After Dark, Brad? I didn't burn you out.
Of course, yeah, of course, man. Thanks. That was quite a ride, man. I think that's he's another figure, it's good to know the Victor Gruen story. I think knowing the Victor Gruen story, actually, if you're an American in particular, but malls are everywhere now. So you're driving down your 12-lane divided highway and you see the mall and the big box stores and all of that. Hopefully I'd certainly have come away with a sense of kind of understanding how we got to where we are. So thank you for that. You did a great job.
We're coming back for After Dark, patreon.com/artofdarkpod. And just, again, the next time you step foot into the mall, think of the bright lights of Broadway. Think of the little Naschmarkt theater in Vienna, the little socialist political theater. Look around you and just know you got Gruned.